The Africa Climate Summit today entered its second day with President William Ruto hosting a high-level presidential session in which the panelists have held discussions on the global climate agenda. Speaking during the summit, President Ruto has spoken out against the punitive borrowing measures set by the international community, calling for a fair international financial system. The head of state has further called for conversion on the introduction of carbon tax, noting that climate change is destroying the economies of African nations, despite the continent contributing the least of the emissions.
While we are thinking about financing, for us in Africa, three things are very important. As they say in Kenya, mambo ni matatu. Number one, speed. It takes inordinate to access any meaningful resources. Number two, it requires scale, because we've all agreed that enormous resources are required. And number three, affordability, so that we all pay the same. We pay 5 times more than others, meaning that in fact, the architecture is set up in a manner that if you borrow, it will be difficult for you to pay. And that is why we need a conversation, and a very candid conversation, and we are saying this in all honesty, around how do we get concessional funding? How do we pay as much as others are paying? How do we get Africa away from paying 5 times more? Many of our countries are headed into debt distress because of climate change. Let's be honest. We are suffering the most, whether it is in the Sahel with drought, whether it is in the Horn of Africa with drought, whether it is in South Africa and the southern part of our continent with cyclones. And we are saying the suffering is across the globe, but we carry the biggest brunt. I'll contextualize this. And because of climate change, we are forced to divert resources that are meant for economic growth into dealing with the effects of climate change.